So I think Chaitanya Champu doesn't need any introduction here at Pune. Many devotees very personally connect to him, also hear his lectures regularly, and Prabhuji is from Pune only. At the same time, for the benefit of my own purification and also glorification of Prabhuji for the pleasure of Vaishnavas. His guest Chaitanya Champu is a monk, mentor, and spiritual author. Seeing the prevalent problems of stress, depression, addiction, and overall misdirection, all caused by lack of spirituality, Prabhuji joined the ISKCON movement, and he has been traveling all over the world, giving several spiritual topics in TEDx, World Peace Conference, UNESCO, Intel, Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, Stanford, Princeton, Yale, Harvard, Massachusetts, and Cambridge. Simply by the names of the universities and the companies, you can understand Prabhu's outreach stature. He gives 400 talks across 100 countries in 4 continents every year. He's an editor of the Back to Godhead magazine, which is an official international magazine of HareKrishna movement. Prabhuji is also the member of the SAC, Shastrika Advisory Council of ISKCON, which offers counsel on scriptural matters to the GBC. He has presented papers on the interface of science and spirituality as an invited delegate at national and international conferences like World Peace Conference 2006 and World Peace Congress 2008 under the UNESCO chair. Prabhuji had been actually very instrumental to make science and spirituality come up when Radheshampu started his youth preaching. Radheshampu, Chaitanya Champu has this very special gift to give to Srila Prabhupada's and the world at large. So Prabhuji has been contributing through books also on science and spirituality, and here Prabhu is now addressing at the World Peace Conference. Then he's the author of a world's only Gita daily feature. I'm sure many of you must have come in touch with that. So he writes daily 300-word inspirational talk, where more than 3,000, 4,000 Gita daily articles have been brought out by him. He has actually profound realizations on Gita, and he has brought out 2 very beautiful books also based on that. So he is available on the GitaDaily.com and the SpiritualScientist.com, where he addresses thousands of devotees and people at large through audio answers like that. What do you call podcasts? Actually, Prabhuji also does one podcast of interviews with many devotees all over the world, and many wonderful interviews have happened and bring out very valuable wisdom for the devotees community. So that has also been his contribution. His articles have been published in many newspapers like Indian Express, Economic Times, Times of India, in the Speaking Tree column. Prabhuji's articles have been translated to German, Chinese, Romanian, and many Indian languages like Kannada, Telugu, Bengali, Hindi, and Marathi. And Prabhuji is also the author of more than 25 books on applied mindfulness and purposeful meaning, like the Energy, Your Sutra for Positive Thinking, Science and Spirituality series, and Recession, Why Do We Need a Temple, Frequently Unanswered Questions, Idol Worship or Ideal Worship, Oh My God, GK for PK, Prabhupada, The Movements That Made the Movement, and many more. So Prabhu is actually, apart from that, Prabhu's audio videos have touched many of the devotees' heart. Wherever he walks, devotees say, "Oh, Prabhuji, you are here." And then actually he has touched many lives who he also may not be knowing that how many are touched. So lakhs of devotees and lakhs of people all over the world are taking benefit of his wisdom and realizations based on the teachings of Srila Prabhupada. So we heartily welcome Prabhuji to Shri Shri Radha Vrindavan Chandra Mandir by 3 times loudly chanting Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanishalaakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्णा। हिंदी अनुवाद ये कक्षा का ऊपर भक्ति ऊपर वाले टेम्पल हॉल में चल रहा है, तो यहाँ पे इंग्लिश में है, तो आप ऊपर जा सकते हैं, वरना FM पे सुन सकते हैं। 89.7 उस पर आपको मिल जाएगा।
So So this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 3, Text 32. Shunvatam grunatam viryani udamani harer mahu yatha sujataya bhaktya शुद्धेनात्मव्रतादिभिः शृण्वतां गृणतां वीर्याणि उड्डामणि हरेर्मुहुः यथा सुजातया भक्त्या शुद्धेनात्माव्रतादिभिः शृण्वतां गृणतां वीर्याणि उड्डामणि हरेर्मुहुः यथा सुजातया भक्त्या शुद्धेनात्माव्रतादिभिः। उड्डामणि हरेर्मुहुः सुजातया भक्त्या शुद्धेनात्माव्रतादिभिः। उड्डामणि हरेर्मुहुः यथा सुजातया भक्त्या शुद्धेनात्माव्रतादिभिः। Vaishnavis, Shunvatam, of those hearing, Grunatam, and chanting, Viryani, the wonderful activities, Udamani, able to counteract sin, Hare, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Muhu, always, Yatha, as, Sujataya, easily brought forth, bhaktya, by devotional service. Shuddhyet, may be purified. Na, not. Atma, the heart and soul. Vrat adibhi, by performing ritualistic ceremonies. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. One who constantly hears and chants the holy name of the Lord and hears and chants about His activities can very easily attain the platform of pure devotional service, which can cleanse the dirt from one's heart. One cannot achieve such purification merely by observing vows and performing Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. One may very easily practice chanting and hearing the holy name of the Lord and thus become ecstatic in spiritual life. Padma Puran states, Namaprad yuktanam namanyeva harantyagam avishranti prayuktani tanya evartha karani cha. Even if one chants the Hare Krishna Mahamantra offensively, one can avoid offenses by continuously chanting without deviation. One who becomes accustomed to this practice will always remain in pure transcendental position, untouchable by sinful reactions. Shukdev Goswami especially requested King Parikshit to note this fact very carefully. There is no profit, however, in executing the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. By performing such activities, one may go to the higher planetary systems. But as stated in Bhagavad Gita 9.21, Kshine punye martyalokam mishanti. When the period of one's enjoyment in the heavenly planets is terminated because of the limited extent of the result of one's pious activities, one must return to earth. Thus, there is no use in endeavoring to travel up and down in the universe. It is better to chant the holy name of the Lord so that one may become fully purified and eligible to return home back to Godhead. That is the aim of life, and that is the perfection of life. Hare Krishna. So today morning, I'm grateful to be here with all of you, and we'll be speaking on, we'll be discussing this theme in the Bhagavatam of the contrast between bhakti and other paths. Now, Srila Prabhupada, I'll be using this tablet as a writing board to write some things. So, Srila Prabhupada often said, study scripture from different perspectives. Study scripture scrutinizingly from different perspectives. So, we can do that in many ways. So, one way is just looking at scripture. We can look at it if we consider a particular verse in scripture. You can say, what does the verse itself mean? That's the literal meaning of the verse. Then, we could look at the verse in the context of the chapter. In that particular chapter, what does the verse mean? Generally, when we hear a point, the point itself may be interesting, but okay, what is the point of the point? That means, why is this point being made? Sometimes some devotees have a lot of humor in their classes. And it's nice if the humor is organic. However, at the end, if people only remember the joke and they forget what was the point made by the joke, then that's not the carry home we want to have from a spiritual talk, isn't it? So, to understand properly, we understand the point and the point of the point. So, okay, what does this verse say? But what does this verse mean within the chapter? Then we can go further and we can look at what it means within that particular section of the Bhagavatam. Like sometimes some pastimes or some philosophical analysis that extends over many chapters. Then we can look further what it means within the book itself. In the overall message of the book, what is the role of this verse? Or specifically, we can look at it in terms of, in this case, the Parikshit Maharaj Shukdev Goswami conversation. I hope that is clear enough over there. Then, beyond that, we can look at its universal significance. Is there some timeless universal truth being spoken through this? And then beyond that, we can look at its contemporary relevance. Contemporary means, what does it mean for us? So in this way, when we place a verse in different contexts, then we can understand it more and more. It's just like understanding people. Normally, when we meet someone, we talk with them and we understand that person. Okay, this person thinks like this. But if we really want to know that person, then we see that person in different contexts. Okay, how does that person deal with their equals? How does that person deal with their subordinates? How does that person deal with their seniors? How does that person respond when they are provoked? How does that person respond when they are, when basically things are not going their way? So just as when a person is placed in different contexts, then we can understand that person better. So similarly, when we place verses in different contexts, then we can understand verses better. So I'm doing this project on Gita Daily where each Gita verse can be placed in 7 different contexts. So I've taken about 21 key verses of the Gita and analyzing them in seven different contexts like this. In terms of the verse, what it means, the section, the chapter, the overall message of the Gita, Krishna-Arjuna conversation, the universal meaning, the meaning for spiritual seekers, the meaning for devotees, the meaning for people in general. So it's a fascinating analysis, how much we can learn from even one verse. So let's look at it. Now, in today's session, I won't be able to go through all the levels, but let's start with, and we'll see how many levels we can take. I'll take the little meaning of the verse. So this can be put in, and then we will look at the meaning, at least in terms of the Bhagavatam itself. And then we'll look at it in terms of the, for us today, in terms of the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. And there, I'll try to talk something about Advaita Acharya on this sacred day. So, what is the verse saying? The verse is essentially saying 2 things. It is saying that if we consider purification is what we are seeking, then there are 2 ways to purification. And it is contrasting these 2 ways to purification. So, one is by hearing and chanting. And the other is by performing Vedic rites. Both are meant for Atma Shuddhaye, for purification of the heart. So Vedic rites can mean performing yajnas, doing yajna dana tapa like that. And in this case, here Shunvanti Grunanti Viryani, that we hear and chant the glories of the Lord. And what it is saying is, Shunvanti Grunanti Viryani, when the glories of the Lord, if we do that consistently, Hare Muhu, then what will happen is, it will Bhakti Sujataya. By such hearing and chanting, Bhakti will arise in the heart. So, and then that level of purification, Natma Shuddhayet, that purification will not happen by any other means. So, among these 2 paths, this verse is recommending, this is a greater than sign, that it is recommending the path of bhakti. And it is saying, what happens exactly? Hearing and chanting, it creates attraction toward the transcendental. So in purification, there are 2 aspects. And why is, okay. So if we consider purification, you could say there's a negative axis. Purification is, we could say, elimination of the negative and establishment of the positive. Both are required in purification. That means, if we consider purification to be like healing, if somebody is infected by viruses, we want the viruses to be removed from the body. But after that, we also want that the person's natural energy levels come back, the body starts functioning. In healing, in recovery from disease, there is a phase called recuperation, where the person is no longer infected. Infection is gone, but the body is not restored in normal energy. So what happens by the Vedic rites is that, to some extent, this elimination of the negative can happen. So a person may be over here. From there, okay, you've done some sinful activity, you become contaminated by that, do some atonement. And you will become purified by that. That will happen by the rites, Vedic rites. So the rites also have something right about it. They're not wrong. They're also good. However, what they don't do is the rights in themselves. They don't create attraction toward the positive. And what bhakti does is, from wherever one is starting, bhakti can take one all the way across. Not only remove the effects of the negative, it removes the attraction to the negative by creating attraction for the positive. So in general, we all have lower desires, selfish desires, worldly desires. So these desires cannot be driven out of the consciousness, but they can be crowded out of the consciousness. There's a difference. When we want to purification, it is much easier to do it through a particular means. Okay. So when we want to purify ourselves, we can have many different ways in which we purify ourselves. But among these, the easiest way. So if I want purification, we can drive out the negative. Like if you want we don't want some person in a particular place. You may drive that person out. And that requires effort. The person doesn't want to go. There'll be a big fight over there. But if we know that person doesn't like crowds, and we bring a lot of people into that room, and that person has no space, that person will go away on their own. So driving out the negative, this is not easy. But crowd out the negative. So crowd out the negative, that means what? We fill our life with positive activities. And not only fill our life with positive activities, bhakti does that. Bhakti provides us so many activities that we can do. But more than that, bhakti also creates attraction for the positive. So this crowding happens in two ways. It is not just filling our day, but it's creating attraction. Krishna says in 12:9 in the Bhagavad Gita, Athachittam samadhatum. If your mind is not naturally filled with me, Athachittam samadhatum na shaknosi mai sthiram. And abhyasa yogena tato mam ichhaptum dhananjaya. He says, if you consistently hear and chant, by that what will happen is, your desire for hearing and chanting will increase. By consistently performing atonement. It's not that the desire for atonement will increase. I do something wrong, maybe I commit some offense, so I decide to fast. Okay, it's good to do some kind of atonement like that. But by fasting, it's not that I'm going to develop attraction for fasting. Unlikely, isn't it? Some people may, but it's unlikely. You do it as austerity. But bhakti, yes, we may have to do it initially as austerity, but as we keep doing it, it becomes easy to fill our mind, because bhakti develops, bhakti creates attraction for Krishna within us. And that's how Tani sarvani sanyamya yukta asita matparaha vashehi yasyendriyani tasya prajna pratishtita. This verse we often quote it, but there are actually three distinct stages in this particular verse which Krishna is talking about. That he says that first there is sanyamya. Sanyamya is restraint. Tani sarvani sanyamya yukta asita matparaha. And then yukta asita matparaha is, this is more like connection, absorption in Krishna. And then after that, what is it? Vashehi yasyendriyani. Now, restraint, and this is conquest. Like we restrain someone means that person is fighting, that person is resisting, but we tie them up. That's restraint. But conquest means that the person is defeated. So we do need a certain level of self-discipline even to practice bhakti. However, if with whatever discipline we have, we just try to hear, we try to chant, then by that something extraordinary happens. It is that connection with Krishna creates attraction to him. And that attraction leads to the filling of our consciousness with Krishna. And once the consciousness is filled with Krishna, then there is the worldly desires getting eliminated. And that is how there is conquest. So Sanyamya and Vasha are two different things. Sanyamya is more of controlling, Vasha is more of conquering. And the key stage in between them is actually connecting with Krishna. So whatever level we can connect with Krishna right now, we do that. Sometimes when we are not able to, sometimes even while practicing bhakti, we focus more, we may focus more on driving out the negative rather than filling our consciousness with the positive. So, I will not do this again, I will not do this again, I will not do this again, I will not do this again. Well, if you are too obsessed, the problem with that is that just that negative resolution does not bring much strength. I will not do something that only creates deprivation. Oh, I cannot do it, I should not do it, I will not get what I was getting from that. So that creates deprivation. So, there is a story in the Christian tradition where there is one Christian thinker who wrote about how the devil thinks. So he says, generally when people make resolutions, he says, they will become a better person, they will become more holy, they will become more religious. So he says, the devil is never more happy than when people make negative resolutions. Why? Because negative resolutions are actually very easy to topple. I will not do this. 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 When we are thinking, I will not do this, we are thinking about it still, isn't it? See, we are still thinking about it, and the thinking will make us feel eventually a sense of deprivation. Oh, I can't do it. Why can I not do it? So, dhyayato vishayan pumsaha. So, dhyayato can be with the desire to enjoy, but dhyayato can also be with the desire to avoid. And either way, if the dhyayato happens, if the contemplation is happening, then sangha will come. So, I will not do it. I will not do it. I will not do it. And then as we are thinking about it, the mind comes up with an eraser and erases the knot. I will not do it. I will not do it. I will do it. So, therefore, negative resolutions are very difficult to sustain. Now, that does not mean there are not things which we need to give up. Yes, of course there are. There are many things which are unhealthy for us, even physically unhealthy for us, what to speak of spiritually unhealthy for us. But the way to give them up is to take up the positive, to make positive resolutions of what is something which is meaningful for us. What is something that uplifts us? And that is the process of bhakti. So, in this verse, the contrast is being made, and the point is being made that na atma shuddhe, that the purification does not happen sufficiently by Vedic rites. Vedic rites are for atonement. So this is the literal meaning of the verse. That bhakti, hearing and chanting, is far more effective than performing Vedic rites for atonement. Now, if you consider in the context of I'll not go into the context of the chapter over here, we'll go into the context of the section. So this is the section, there's a discussion between the Yamaraj and Yamadutas. And there are few other sections in the Bhagavatam which so dramatically bring about the confrontation between bhakti and karma. Now, generally we consider the path of karma to be materialism. But it's not that simple. It's karma kanda is pious materialism. It is doing punya by which one will go to Swarga. That is not a bad thing. So we could say with respect to the path of elevation, there is a gradual path of elevation. There is karma kanda. It is very much talked about in the Vedas. In the Rig Veda, Samveda, Yajurveda, it's a lot of talk is there about. So what is this? It is also a path of elevation. There is dharma, then there will be artha, there will be kama. But in doing all this kama is not just gross sensual gratification. It is actually the fulfillment of one's desires that brings contentment. Now you can say completely the heart is never content at the material level. That is true. But relatively speaking, there can be lesser or greater contentment. So, dharma, artha, kama, this also leads to elevation. And then after that, when somebody embraces the jnana kanda, then one can move toward moksha. This is a time-honored path for elevation. However, what the Bhagavatam says is, there is another path, and that is the path of bhakti. This is the path of rapid elevation. Where we go beyond moksha, or we attain the highest form of moksha. Sometimes we often talk about going beyond moksha. And that is what the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition talks about, prem as the Pancham Purushartha. Now there are other Vaishnava traditions, they say that there is nothing beyond moksha. So their idea is that the idea that there is something beyond moksha itself is wrong. So yeah, what we are saying is that what the Acharyas, Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas is emphasizing is that the highest form of moksha is so great that moksha gutakrita, it becomes insignificant. So this contrast between bhakti and karma, the path of karma, that is highlighted in many places in the Bhagavatam. But here it is highlighted most dramatically. It is the positive comparison. The path of karma also means that if one does not do dharma, then one is going to go down. If one does not do dharma, then one is going to go down to naraka. So then one does dharma, adharma, one does papa. Then there will be suffering. Yah shastra vidhutrujya vartate kamakarta. Krishna said, nasa siddhi mamapnoti na sukham na param gatim. So, the contrast between bhakti and the path of dharma, artha, kama, moksha. That contrast is given between the tension between Narad Muni versus Daksha. Daksha, at least in that pastime, is not a sinful person. He is not even recommending unrestricted sense gratification. He's actually told his sons, you have to procreate, but you don't procreate like animals. You go and do austerity. You purify yourself, strengthen yourself, and you come back. And he's actually recommending the path of punya. But Narad Muni tells him, this is a too slow a path. You are all spiritually evolved. You just take the path of bhakti. And he says, what have you done? He says, he's the father, but he doesn't read his sons as well as Narad Muni does. And there, so Narad Muni it's not that Daksha is wrong in the Vedic sense. He's right. But bhakti, Narad Muni is talking about bhakti over there. So that is the tension between karma and bhakti. But in this particular pastime, where we're talking about Ajamil pastime, and specifically within that, the confrontation happens between the Vishnu Dutas and the Yamadutas. So this is the contrast between bhakti and adharma, bhakti and vikarma. And what the Yamadutas are saying, they are actually making a very reasonable case. They are saying he has committed so many sinful activities, and after committing so many sinful activities, he has not done anything for atonement. And yet, although he has not done anything for atonement, still we were stopped in doing our duty. What is going on over here? Why did this happen? So say the police go to arrest a criminal, and then say the law comes over there and they chastises the police. What are you doing? He says, we are doing our job. This is not your job. You don't know what your job is. Really? The police may go to their inspector and ask, what happened? We are doing our job. He says, no. This is... So Yamaraj is speaking over here. So Yamaraj has this, you could say, the dual role. Yamaraj, if you consider Yamaraj's role, Yamaraj has a role on the path of karma, and he has a role on the path of bhakti. So his role on the path of karma is, there he is acting as a judge. So who has done which karma, based on that, he has to be given accordingly punishments. But at the path of bhakti, he is an acharya. So sometimes what happens is that, say, if we know somebody in only an official capacity, say we work in a company and we come to know, we know about the CEO of our company, a very powerful, wealthy, talented, brilliant person. Then we know them in the official capacity. And then maybe we are exploring spirituality, and we come to a temple, and then we see that same CEO, is serving prasad to everyone. Hey, what's going on? So it's difficult to figure who is this person? This person, presides over multi-billion-dollar meetings and simply serving food over here. What's going on? You see the person in a different role. We never seen that person that role. So like that, Yamadutas have only seen Yamaraj in this role. This is the vision of the Yamadutas, of Yamaraj. They have seen him only in the official capacity. Officially, he is the judge. And see, Yamaraj also has a job. And when he has a job, he has to do the job well. Krishna in the Bhagavatam talks about karma sangraha. Karma sangraha means, Loka sangraha, Loka sangraha means maintenance of the world. Loka sangraha mevapi sampashyan kartum arhasi. That each one of us has to do our duties so that the world and its order can be maintained. So if somebody has a particular responsibility, they have to do that job well. If somebody runs a hotel, and in the hotel somebody's hungry and they come for food, and they say, actually, you're not the body. And if you eat food after 6 hours, you'll be hungry again. Better chant Hare Krishna. You can tell them chant Hare Krishna, but first give them food. If somebody is in the emergency unit in the hospital, and a person comes, their hand is fractured, and says, actually, body injury, come and go. You just chant Hare Krishna. No, you have to do your job. You do your job, and then when we are in a particular role, we have to fulfill that role. Now we can do something extra. While doing our job, we can also try to share spirituality. So Yamaraj has been doing his job with the Yamadutas. And that's why Yamaraj has not had an opportunity to speak about the Lord with the Yamadutas. But when this particular encounter happens, and when they come back, and who are these effulgent beings? What happened over here? So Yamaraj's heart's opportunity, heart's longing, he has an opportunity to fulfill that now. And that's why he starts speaking about the glories of the Lord. He starts saying that actually you are mistaken. Why? Because you do not understand the potency of bhakti. So in this particular pastime, this, from the path of karma, from the perspective of the path of karma, Ajamil has done many, many wrong things, and he has done nothing to fix them. But so from that perspective, he is seriously culpable. But there is a bhakti perspective. And from the bhakti perspective, he is what the Yamdutas are told by Yamaraj, and before that they are told by Vishnudas, he is no longer culpable. Now, we have to understand what this means. So from the chapter perspective, that what is this, if you consider from the chapter perspective, the point is that this is demonstrating how bhakti purifies even when one has not done any punya, or even when one has done papa. Now, we could go beyond this now. We can look at it from a universal perspective now. It's strange. Okay. So if you look at it from a universal perspective, what does this mean? This pastime has to be understood very carefully. There's a prominent Christian theologian. He is considered to have been responsible for converting more Hindus to Christianity than any other Christian in the world. In fact, they Like he barely didn't get he was nominated to be considered a saint in the Christian tradition, but he was not. And he wrote a scathing critique of this Ajamil pastime. And he says, this pastime or this story from the Puranas demonstrates all that is not only wrong, but perverse with the Hindu tradition. And he says, there is no sense of justice that a person can commit the worst of wrongs. A person can be horrendously sinful, and that person just chants once the name of God, and that person will be forgiven all sins. He says a religion that teaches something like this deserves to be destroyed from the world's face. Otherwise, everybody will do all kinds of immorality and justify it in the name of religion. Now, what do you think? His analysis is right? Well, there is a point and there is a point of the point. So, the Bhagavatam, among all the Puranas, the Bhagavatam specializes in giving extreme examples. Extreme examples of everything. See, in the fifth... Okay, what happened? Sorry? Here. Okay, here. Okay, thank you. So, he says, see, consider the previous canto itself, fifth canto. There is this great person, Bharat. In a young age, he has left not just ordinary family life, but a kingdom, royal opulence. He has gone to the forest. And there is this attraction to one deer. And he gets deviated. So, this is in many ways an extreme example. In fact, the starting of the Bhagavatam itself is like a small mistake and catastrophic result because of that. The starting of the Bhagavatam itself is what? Parikshit Maharaj commits a minor mistake, if at all you want to call it a mistake. And what happens is, death sentence. Capital punishment. And in some ways, if somebody is to be punished, you just shoot them and they die painlessly. That's better. But you told you're going to die in 7 days. It's like 7 days of agony. I'm going to die. What should I do? That's Shringi. Why did he say you will die in 7 days? So the Acharyas explain, why didn't he just curse him to die right away? He said, you king, you think you are so powerful? I will show you how powerless you are against the curse, against the power of a Brahmana. Therefore, you will have to helplessly watch as death comes upon you. That's why you'll die in 7 days. But, so again, the Bhagavatam gives extreme examples. A small mistake, terrible results. But the Bhagavatam gives, this is an opposite example. That there is a big mistake, or rather there is a small right thing, and a big right result. Now, what is the purpose of extreme example? That is important. So, if you look at the Bhagavatam itself, generally, one of the ways, in logic, or even not in logic, in just fairness, in any kind of fair discussion, it is important that every statement be seen in context. Nowadays, especially with social media making the sharing of not just lectures and talks easily possible, but even the sharing of the clips very easily possible. Somebody might make a statement and it might be in a particular context, but you just cut out maybe 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes and share it. It may be completely out of the context, isn't it? That person may be saying one thing and then you take it out of the context and may say it's completely opposite thing. So, today's class I said particularly this Ajamil pastime illustrates everything that is wrong with the Vedic tradition, Hindu religion. So somebody might take this as a quote and they say, this person is speaking against the Hindu tradition. I am speaking the Purva Paksha. I am not in that Paksha. I'm simply quoting the opposite side. But anything can happen. So if we look at the context of the Bhagavatam itself, after hearing the Ajamil pastime, what does Parikshit Maharaj do? Does Parikshit Maharaj say, hey, just chanting once the name of Narayan was enough for Ajamil? Then why do I have to hear for 7 days? Shukdev Goswami can go away. When the snake bird comes, I will chant Narayan. No. That is not the conclusion that Parikshit Maharaj draws from there. So the purpose of the extreme examples, what is their purpose? It is not to standardize the extreme. It is not to standardize the extreme. It is not that tomorrow if somebody disrespects us or somebody is disrespected by someone, you can say that, I'll curse you. Of course, we have no power to curse. But if we have institutional power, we have political power, we can have financial power, we can abuse it to make people's life like hell. So this is not following the Bhagavatam. I was in one temple, and there it was like everybody was afraid of one of the leaders in the temple. And used to chastise everyone publicly. So then that devotee was actually a nice devotee. So I told him, Prabhu, everyone is afraid of you. And he says, he's chastised. He says, I don't like to, but I have to. I said, really, why? He said, otherwise, how will people develop humility? I said, by chastising people, you are not helping them develop humility. You are only causing humiliation. Humility cannot be developed except by personal choice. You can humiliate people, but humiliating people won't make them humble. That will only make them angry. That will only make them vengeful. The difference between humiliation and humility is like the difference between starving and fasting. Humiliation means you forcibly deprive somebody of food. Starving means you forcibly deprive a person of food. They will feel tormented. They will feel enraged. What will they not do for actually getting food? Whereas fasting is a person voluntarily chooses. Yeah, I want food, but I won't take food right now. So it's completely different dynamic. Now, starving is actually harmful for health. Malnutrition leads to all kinds of problems. Fasting, on the other hand, if it is done properly in moderation, is good for health. So similarly, humiliation and humility are two very different things. Sometimes people need to be chastised because they have done something wrong. And we have to stop them from doing that wrong thing. But chastising, especially in public, does not humble people, does not make people humble. Among the various virtues, humility is actually almost every virtue, it has to be chosen individually. We have to choose it. Nobody can force us to develop it. But especially humility, it is entirely a person's choice. I saw one poster, like a slogan on a t-shirt. It was in an American airport. It said, my greatest quality is my humility. So, if you think that your greatest quality, then that itself shows you don't have humility, isn't it? But the point I'm making over here is that, I said that, he said that actually we have scripture, so many examples of the spiritual teachers strongly chastising their students for the good of the students. I said, yes, there are examples. You can even quote the example of, say, Chota Haridas. But is that the standard that is followed by all the teachers in the tradition? No. There are extreme examples and they are important. But the purpose of the extreme examples is not to standardize the extreme. It is to reinforce the standard through a memorable example. Through a memorable example. I'll explain what I mean by this. That Parikshit, even Shukdev Goswami himself, after describing the Ajamil pastime, he says that Ajamil was benefited so much by once chanting. So if somebody regularly hears and chants the glories of the Lord, how much more will they be benefited? So the point is, we not standardize the extreme, we reinforce the standard through an extreme example. And often, extreme example is a memorable example. Ordinary things we don't remember much, but extraordinary things we remember. When we meet people, we meet so many people. If somebody is very tall, somebody is very short, that stays in our memory. If somebody is extraordinarily brilliant, somebody is extraordinarily forgetful, we remember that. So extraordinary things, those which are out of the ordinary, that's what are memorable. So the Bhagavatam gives extreme examples. But that's why within the tradition itself, how has this pastime been seen? It is not that the acharyas have told everybody can do any kind of immorality and just chant Hare, chant the holy name. In fact, that is one of the offenses against the holy name. That to knowingly, now I'll do this wrong and then I'll chant the holy names to nullify the wrong. We may do something wrong and we can chant holy names after that. That's fine. But doing that with the intention, that is itself offensive. So there are inbuilt safety nets, safeguards within the tradition itself. So this verse and this particular pastime is not a license for immorality or a assurance that all immorality can be cancelled simply by bhakti. That is not the point of this pastime. Not at all the point of the pastime. So from a contemporary perspective, what does this mean today? There is always this tension between, we could say, mercy and justice. No, what is the right thing to do? When somebody has done something wrong, should they be forgiven or should they be disciplined? So the point is that this particular pastime is not a universal governing principle. This is an extraordinary principle which is meant to inspire us to practice bhakti. It is meant to enable us to actually deepen our conviction in bhakti. So as individuals, in general, so I talked about contemporary relevance at a broader level in today's world. Now let's talk about contemporary relevance at a more immediate personal level, with which I'll conclude and then we can have a few questions. So when we are talking now, okay, as I said, I'll talk something about Advaita Acharya. And let me talk that a little bit. So if we see historically, Advaita Acharya appeared at a very significant time in bhakti. If you see the broad Indian tradition, there was the Vedic path. Then slowly it started becoming more and more ritualistic. Now I'm not going to go into specific timelines. From Kali Yuga this started happening. Then after it became not only ritualistic, it became very hierarchically stifling. Okay. Got disconnected from there? Okay. So it became ritualistic means what? That people just started doing the externals. And then when they're just doing the externals without knowing the internals, without pursuing the internals, just the rites were happening. Then the rites cannot make the heart right. Rites are important. Rites and rituals are important, but they alone cannot make the heart right. You might just do them externally, and internally we go on becoming more and more materialistic. Is something wrong from my side? So then after that, so this is when Buddhism and Jainism, they started spreading. And in fact, we today don't consider very significant, but there was a time in Indian history when large parts of India were ruled by Buddhist and Jain kings. In fact, there are Indian atheists who proudly proclaim that among in the classical times means that the 5 centuries before Jesus came and 5 centuries after Jesus came, that's called a classical history. It's actually more books propagating atheism were written in India than any other part of the world. Because now we see Buddhists and Jains as, okay, they are particular religions, but philosophy, we know them in terms of their lifestyle, largely, culture. But philosophically, they were atheistic. So, there's a lot of decline. Dharmasya glani had happened. And from there, what happened was, Shankaracharya came. Actually, let's put it this way. Shankaracharya came. And he brought people, again in the Vedic fold. And after he brought people back into the Vedic fold, then there was a bhakti resurgence that started. So it started from Ramanujacharya primarily in a systematic way. But before that, the Alvars were there. Now, bhakti was always going on. But bhakti was not prominently established or glorified as the conclusion. So then Ramacharya was there, Madhvacharya was there. In many ways, Mahaprabhu, when he came, the bhakti renaissance was at its zenith, was rising. At that time itself, we had saints all over India. In Maharashtra, there were so many saints. Tukaram Maharaj and others came. In South India, there were so many saints. In North India, there were so many saints. All of them, they appeared more or less at a similar time. Now, at this particular time, we'll see this contrast between Punya, Papa versus Bhakti. We have in the same book, Chaitanya Charitamrita, I said extreme examples. You can look at this. Is extreme example here. So, we have one extreme example of hierarchy becoming so stifling. So, let's take a negative example and a positive example. The positive example is Advaita Acharya, he gave the first offering of the first food to whom? Haridas Thakur. Just to understand how radical it was. Now we hear it, just to understand how radical it was, let's consider another pastime which is described in the same book. And that's the pastime of Subudhi Rai. Now what happens to Subudhi Rai? Any of you know the story? Yeah, he is just, some Muslim comes and sprinkles some water on him. And he is considered not only converted to Islam, but so irredeemably converted to Islam that the only way he can come back to the Vedic path is by eating hot ghee. Drinking hot ghee so much that his body dies. And his soul in the next life will be born in a Hindu family. Now this is the extent to which this caste consciousness. Actually, we use the word Smartha Brahmana, but there are Smartha Brahmanas who say we never teach this kind of things. So sometimes we use this word Smartha Brahmana in a very broad way. Yes, Smartha Brahmanas, they follow rituals, but this is an extreme example of somebody considered to be so irredeemably become impure that there's no way to deliver them. This is all coming from an excessive application of the idea of Papa and Punya. Yes, we may get contaminated by associating with impure people, but to say consider that contamination is something which can never be removed. That is an atrocious idea. So in such a country, India is a huge country, and the Bhakti Renaissance happened in many places. But that doesn't mean everybody started adopting the Bhakti values. So what is the Bhakti value over here? Let's try to understand this. That, see, the hierarchical understanding is, see, there are Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, and then beyond there are outcasts. So this is the hierarchical understanding. And this goes on, and then there are Mlechas, Yavanas. So the idea is, if there is any contact between these two, if a Brahmana comes in contact with a Mlecha, then what happens is, that contact will not lift the Mlecha up. It's not that this will happen. they say this will happen. So this is the casteist understanding that contact is so impure that anybody can be completely contaminated, irreversibly contaminated. So this is the hierarchical understanding. Now, is this a scriptural understanding? See, scripture does talk about hierarchy. But the point of the hierarchy is social organization. It is just that society has to be organized in a particular way. The point of the hierarchy was not to impose like a puritanical embargo where, people at this level are forever to be at that level. So, but from the bhakti perspective, it's something entirely different. From the bhakti perspective, you can say Brahmana, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras. We can have outcasts. We can have Mlechas, Yavanas. We can have Brahmanas. It's not so much hierarchical as horizontal. So bhakti is something that can be accessed by everyone from wherever they are. So in that sense, bhakti is universal. So this is illustrated. Now what happens is that this tension, Karma Kanda says that actually somebody who's low born, the only way they can rise higher is they do their low born duties diligently in this lifetime, next lifetime they'll be born in a higher world. And like that, Bahunam Janmanam Ante. They will not necessarily come to Vishnu. Bahunam Janmante, they will become Brahmanas. That is their idea. That was the hierarchical understanding. So Advaita Acharya, when in that society, he is not only, see, it's one thing to have, in that caste conscious society, to have a relationship with a mlecha. Means to be friendly with him. It's another thing to invite a mlecha to your house for food. It's this caste consciousness is so great. There's one person who became a devotee in Bengal, in America. He's from Bengali. He was like a math genius. He is so good at math that his teacher said, that you can. This was about 20-25 years ago, not recently. So his teacher said, you are so brilliant. His teacher was loved math. He loved math. He invited him to his house. And his teacher was a Brahmana family. He was from a Shudra family. His teacher's family said, he cannot come to our house. And he came to his house. What happened was that they said, you have to eat on a separate table. And he said, his teacher, they had to cook separate food for him. He said, this was just 25 years ago. And he said, when I went to America, because he's such a brilliant genius, this is exceptional. It's not a general reflection of India or America. But he said, when I went to America, actually, my PhD guide came to receive me at the airport. He said, this was completely unreal. A completely different country I am in. He says, here nobody judges me by my birth. Because he was brilliant at math. And the PhD, actually, he told me that 6 universities are actually competing to have him come and do PhD in their university. So now, he said, at that time I decided I'll have nothing to do with India. I'll have absolutely nothing to do with anything. This country which is so discriminatory in terms of caste. It's one thing to hold people responsible for something that they can control. But if you blame people for something they can't control, at least from this life's perspective. Now, you don't control how a person is born. I have nothing to do with it. But he said, it's only when I read Srila Prabhupada's books and I understood that. He had a lot of reservations reading Prabhupada's books also. Finally, when he read them, he understood that actually bhakti is universal. And now he slowly started becoming favorable to bhakti. But even now, he's very critical of the caste system and its effects. Now, fortunately in India, most of us have probably lived in urban places. So because of urbanization, because of education, because of employment, caste consciousness doesn't come so much in urban places. But still in rural places, it is very much there. So the point I'm making is, I'm not criticizing India. I'm just talking about, this was just 25 years ago. 500 years ago, when Advaita Acharya not only invites Haridas Thakur to his house, not only gets him to take food in his house, he has got Brahmanas, and among them he tells Haridas Thakur, you take food first. So it is audacious. I'm deliberately using the word audacious because the word has two connotations. Audacious means it can mean reckless and it can also mean fearless. So it was, in one sense, some people could have thought it was reckless. But Advaitacharya was fearless. He had such faith in the potency of bhakti that he's constantly chanting the holy names. He's so glorious. Then definitely he is the greatest. So hierarchies are inevitable. Bhakti also creates its own hierarchy. But the hierarchy in bhakti is based on devotion. So what happens is, the Bhagavatam often talks, and this is what Advaitacharya is not talking about some newfangled idea. The Bhagavatam itself says, Viprad Dishadaguna Itutad Arvinda Nabha Pada Ravinda Vimukhad Shopacham Varishtam. He says, Manye Tadartha Achne Titartha. What is that? Manye. No, he says, Kulam Punati Sakulam Natu Bhurimanaha. So he says that somebody who is a devotee, that person is higher than even a Brahmana, if that Brahmana is not turning toward Krishna. So in terms of this hierarchy, what it means is that the Brahmana may be at the top, but if the Brahmana is, his vision is downwards, how high I am above everyone else, and the Brahmana is not even looking at Krishna. Krishna is way up, the Brahmana is Arvinda Nama Vimukhat. On the other hand, somebody may be a Chandala. The social hierarchy, they may be here, but they are looking at Krishna. Then he's saying this person is much higher. So that, sorry? Sorry. This person, Chandala, is much, much higher. Why? Because that person has devotion. So the point of this, the pastimes in the Bhagavatam, is to dramatize a principle. The principle that punya and papa are important, but bhakti is much more important. It is to dramatize a principle. It is not to normalize the extreme. It is that what the lesson that we want to take, and that lesson that the acharyas have taught, the lesson that the bhakti tradition has taught, is not that we just don't care about punya and papa. Rather, we get inspired to practice bhakti. And we get inspired to practice bhakti knowing the potency of bhakti. Now, does that mean that this will happen for everyone? No, it doesn't mean that it will happen for everyone. We don't demand that. See, Krishna says, Yathamam prapadyante tam sathaiva bhajamyaham. So, if we, what is happening here? See, if we are calculative when we approach Krishna, if the soul is calculative, it's becoming too thick. If the soul is becoming calculative, no. Sorry. Then Krishna will also become calculative. You say you have done this for me. Or you have done this. Oh, what about all these wrongs that you have done? So, we can't say that, I'll do all these wrong and I'll chant one holy name. Krishna, you have to deliver me. No, a devotee can't demand. That is not the mood of a devotee. So rather, if there's a repentant soul, then Krishna is compassionate. So we can't be calculative in our practice. I do this much, therefore Krishna must do this much. That is not, no. Ajamil did only this much and Krishna did so much. So Krishna is so compassionate. I want to appeal to that compassionate Krishna. Not that I demand, you did this to me, I did this to you. You did this to that person, you have to do that to me also. No, not like that. So if you are inspired, ultimately to be inspired about bhakti means to be inspired about, to be inspired with conviction in Krishna's benevolence, in Krishna's mercifulness, in Krishna's wanting the best for us. Now, whether that our transformation takes one day or 1 year or one lifetime or several lifetimes, as long as we are taking shelter of Krishna, we are in safe hands. We are being drawn closer to Him. So the pastime is meant to inspire us to become more dedicated to the practice of bhakti, not more animated in making more demands from Krishna. So I'll summarize. I discussed 4 main points today. So the first point I discussed was the meaning of the verse. The meaning of the verse was how? Oh God, why is this changed like this? Yeah, but the thickness is very less. Okay. So bhakti is much greater than karma. That was the first point I discussed. I discussed elaborately this point that how karma is also a good thing. This pastime illustrates not only bhakti is greater than karma, bhakti can deliver somebody from vikarma also. So Daksha Narada pastime says this, Vishnuduta Yamduta pastime. The second point I discussed was that what this verse means. Sorry. The first point was just the literal meaning of the verse. The second was Yamraj double role. Yamraj, not double role, 2 roles you can say. So he is in official capacity, is governing the path of karma as a judge, and he is also as an acharya. So here the Yamdutas first time see Yamraj as more than just a judge. And then Yamraj gets opportunity to glorify them. Then in the broader context, we discuss the broad contemporary application is what is the purpose of extreme examples. It is their purpose has to be clearly understood. Not that we normalize the extreme, but rather we reinforce the standard by remembering the extreme example. And then in that connection itself, extension of that, I discussed the last point, which was that when we are practicing bhakti, we focus, we are not calculative, but we are repentant. So Krishna is reciprocal. We want to invoke the compassionate heart of Krishna through our practice of bhakti. And then Krishna will surely deliver us. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So I will not be calculative and evaluate the goodness of my class by the volume of the applause. No, it was just, yes, please. Any questions? Yes, Prabhu. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu. Regarding the 6th offense, chanting holy name and then committing sins with the intention of utilizing. So
I don't want to commit an offense to you by saying it is not the 6th offense. It is the 7th offense. Okay. Yeah.
So I always have a difficulty in trying to see it happening, because especially those who come to a devotional fold or trying, I don't see them doing it. I mean, if someone is doing it, then the question of him chanting the holy name itself is, dicey, in the sense he may not even be chanting, and the whole purview of offenses may not even apply to him because he's being just transactional. So are there any examples to really understand that someone is actually doing it?
Okay. So what do we mean by offenses? Especially, will a devotee commit the offense of chanting the holy name, committing sinful activity in the name of the holy name? Well, see, it's a complicated subject, but broadly, we can say that, see, we all have worldly desires. We all have material desires. Oh, what happened? Again, it's become, I think. So, still, okay, anyway. So, now we can't just wish away our material desires. We have those desires. So, we may be working on those desires. Working on means we are practicing bhakti, by which those desires become purified. But we may also be working with the desires. That means what? I have the desires, I am not fueling them, but they are there. I can't just wish them away. They are there, and if they torment me, there are acceptable boundaries within which some desires can be fulfilled. And the whole idea of the Vedic path is that there are multiple boundaries for different people. Not everybody has to function in the same boundary. Like Brahmachari and Grahastha is an example of two different boundaries. Like that, there are multiple boundaries. Srila Prabhupada accepted followers who became disciples. And Srila Prabhupada accepted people who became life members also. Not at the same level. For the life members, there were no boundaries. There are very few instances of Prabhupada asking life members whether they were chanting 16 rounds, whether they were waking up in the morning, or anything like that. Prabhupada had very warm relationships with them also. So the point is, there can be different boundaries for different people. It is clear that his disciples were far more dedicated than the life members, no doubt about that. The point is, so some people have worldly desires and they work with the desires. And working with the desires itself is not an offense. But there can be, beyond that, working for the worldly desires. That means, working for means I am actively fueling that desire. I had the desire, okay, I had a desire to do a particular thing. I had a desire to achieve this particular level of wealth. I have this kind of house. And I have become a devotee, but I still want that now. Okay, I have that desire. And if I try to give it up, sometimes trying to give up a desire can cause a greater distraction than pursuing the desire. I'm not saying always. Because sometimes it depends on person to person. Like it's like fasting. For some people, fasting can remove the distraction of food and they can focus on Krishna. For other people, fasting can become a distraction from Krishna. Isn't it? You're trying to fast and you're constantly thinking of food. Okay, go take some food and come back and focus on Krishna. Isn't it? So the same applies with various desires. So each person has to individually check. Our purpose, Prabhupada did not start the International Society for Rejection of Material Desires. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And which desire is affecting our Krishna consciousness in which way will vary from individual to individual. So sometimes some people may even work for material desires. Can they be bhakti devotees? Well, they can be. But it depends on how much those desires are consuming their consciousness. However, now all material desires are also not the same. There are moral desires, there are immoral desires. And immoral desires somebody is pursuing. And then somebody is thinking that, because I'm chanting, everything is all right. Well, maybe not. Say, for example, if somebody does some financial malpractices and they think I'll earn more money and then I'll use it in Krishna's service. Well, Krishna doesn't really want that kind of Lakshmi. If somebody is doing, because I'm chanting HareKrishna, this is all right. Well, no, not really. There are material principles and there are material consequences. When first time I went to America, I was going from one city to another and you're about to miss the flight. So this devotee started driving very fast. And there are apps. America, the traffic cops are quite vigilant. But what happens is Krishna says that the intelligence can also make mana buddhi, all of them get contaminated. So there are people who have designed apps which tell you where the traffic cops are. So if there is no traffic cop nearby, then you can go above the speed limit also. No problem. Once a person was pulled over by a traffic cop. He says, "Didn't you see the speed limit?" He said, "I saw the speed limit. I just didn't see you." So this person was driving very fast. I told him, "You don't have to drive so fast." He says, No, we are driving for Krishna's sake. No, everything will be all right, I said. So then I didn't know what to say. After that, I talked with one senior devotee. And he said that, when you drive above the speed limit, Krishna leaves the car. So the idea so the point I'm making is there are material principles. And driving, it's a common sense principle. If I'm going to drive fast, it's going to be dangerous. Too fast is dangerous. But similarly, as devotees, we don't think that if we start thinking I can do immoral activities and because I'm a devotee, it's all right. That is where it would be a problem. It is. Now, I'm not saying that sometimes, say, if a person is working in a particular environment where a certain level of crossing of the lines is done by everyone, and a devotee has to do it because that's the way that's the way the world functions. That is not considered an offense. A devotee is not intentionally doing that, thinking by chanting I'll cancel this, or because I'm chanting this will be cancelled. So when that happens, then it can be a problem. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, you have given regarding that person who is a Christian converter. He's giving extreme example of Ajamil. Second thing,
It's interesting. I never thought about Christian converter as a word. Okay.
sorry, Hindu converter.
Electric converter, a Christian converter.
And second example you have given about the mathematician who well received in the US, and then he studied the Srila Prabhupada books. So when we're dealing with the academicians, particularly in Pune, so there are a lot of extremes. After seeing the devotees, they give a lot of extremes. So they already have some perception based on their previous training or understanding. So while dealing with such person, we have to get work done with such persons. So how to deal with them sensitively, so their ego should not be hurt, they have proper understanding, and they can be cooperate with us for our academic activities. So
Okay.
what should be our approach for long-term relationship?
Yeah. See, in general, so if we are talking with people who are of more of academic orientation and they have their preconceptions, and we can say that preconception are misconceptions, but not necessarily. They also had certain experiences. So there are different ways we deal with people. You can say broadly, okay. See, if there are insiders, outsiders. Now, there are broadly 4 ways of communication. There is insider to outsider communication. This is what we call as preaching. Or nowadays we may use the word outreach. But it's insider to outsider communication. Then there is also insider to insider communication. This is like the Bhagavatam class right now. This is, we can call it more as Shastric study, scriptural education. Then, so as a movement, our focus has largely been on this. Now slowly, at least from 1990s onward, 1990s largely, we also started doing this systematically. However, we as a movement have not cared much for this outsider communication. What does that mean? That means most people, let's start from the West. In India at least, Hinduism is a lewd religion for most people. So when people see somebody dancing on the streets, they know, okay, this is Hare Krishna, they are practicing bhakti. But in the West, if somebody encounters some devotee dancing on the street or distributing books, now there was one survey done about what is the most, some people were asked, like 1 million people were asked, what is the most ridiculous thing you have heard in your life? And one of the things in the top 100 was Hare Krishna coming to me on the street and telling me a bluish black person is God. That is one of the most ridiculous things I've heard. So now if people like this, people on the West, they hear, they meet us, they see our books. Now what are they going to do? They will hear something from us, but then they'll Google us. Or they will go to encyclopedias and they read about us. So what an encyclopedia says about Krishna, what academic books say about Krishna, or about not just about Krishna, about Krishna's movement, about Krishna's devotees, about Srila Prabhupada. What they say about... So, what they say is extremely important. It may not be important for us, we may think in our normal outreach, but it is important. So outsider to outsider communication, that is actually very important. And we have in general neglected that. And this is one of the fallouts of if we do very strong preaching. See, strong means many things. I am not using, but especially strong means very cutting, very black and white kind of preaching. And what happens is some people from outsider will become insiders. But many outsiders will become alienated. These are fanatical people. And then that is what they will propagate among each other. And this is what refers to as our reputation. Now, our reputation is also, we may say we are not in the ego business, that is true. But our reputation is important for our outreach. So we as a movement need to know when we are insiders and we are preaching to outsiders. But especially if we go to an outsider forum. Say if we are going to an interfaith forum, or not interfaith forum, we are going to among academicians. at that time we cannot give a Bhagavatam class to them. We have to, although we are an insider, we have to understand the mind of an outsider. And that outsider communication often is not meant to make an outsider an insider. If they become, that's an additional thing. That's a fringe benefit. When Srila Prabhupada started the Bhaktivedanta Institute, it was for scientific research, or scientific outreach, or scientific presentation of Krishna consciousness. He said, it was very clear, the purpose of BI is to increase the prestige of ISKCON. So BI cannot be judged by how many devotees we made. Because that is not the purpose. These people are scientists. They are already dedicated to their field. They are established scientists. It's not likely that they are going to have a radical change in their life. But if some scientists appreciate Krishna consciousness, if some scientists, people in general come, these people, they are not just sentimental. They have a scientific forum. They have scientific conference. Wow, that's impressive. So, when we are in outsider communication, at that time we cannot speak like an insider-outsider. And certainly not like an insider-insider. So, especially when we're dealing with academicians, as you said, there are some people for whom he opened the doors for them to come to Krishna. And there are other people who may open the doors for us to take Krishna to others. Now, those who hold the door open, they may never come to Krishna. Now, if we try to pull them to Krishna, they will close the door and they will also not come. So we have to be very careful, very clear about what we are doing when we are interacting with which people. So in general, when people are very influential already in their life, for them to come to bhakti may be very difficult. And more than that, even if they come to bhakti, they may not want to publicize it. There are many devotees in Mumbai who are actually regularly in touch with Bollywood celebrities and other big celebrities. And they are actually, many of them are practicing spirituality also. But none of them will come out and speak this because of many reasons. One of them is that they don't want to be used. So I was talking with His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj. Maharaj is not in touch with Bollywood, not just Bollywood. He's in touch with many Hollywood celebrities also. So I asked Maharaj, some of them have even come to GV also. We don't talk about this. Maharaj says, I will never talk about them in public. He says, our purpose is to simply be of service to them. He says, if they want to talk about me and talk about Krishna, it's up to them. So they should not feel used. If they feel used, then they will just completely go away from us. And that is what happened with George Harrison. George Harrison was so devoted, but afterwards, if you look at his normal biography in Wikipedia, he says, yes, there was a phase of his life when he was Hare Krishna. It is not like that. He was practicing bhakti to even later part of his life. But every devotee was, you endorse my album, you do this for me, you give me this donation, you do this, you do that. He just felt used. And after that, he became what he himself called a closet devotee. He didn't speak about his bhakti to anyone. So we have to be clear what we are doing with whom. So for such people, don't try to preach to them. Just try to communicate in a respectful way. In a way, Prabhupada also, there's a letter of Prabhupada where he says that, if people are very well educated, people are successful, he says they will be proud. And that's okay. They have earned it, Prabhupada says. And he says, but we should learn the art of how to present Krishna consciousness to them. He's not saying that teach them Krishna consciousness. We learn the art of how to present Krishna consciousness to them. So the onus is on us. Okay? Thank you. The last, okay. Yes, we'll come back to you. You tell me when to stop, Prabhu. I don't want to go too long. Any of the Matajis have any questions? Okay. So, after that one question, I will stop. We'll talk afterwards.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, my question is in order to be delivered from the sinful reactions, we need to do atonement. But what should be the parameter of doing atonement so that we should not deviate from our bhakti also? Suppose if we do
in general, it is, we do bhakti activities itself as atonement, and we do those bhakti activities which will increase our attraction toward Krishna. So that means, say, if we like to read Bhagavatam, and that's wonderful, then as an atonement, we could have both kind of atonements. We could chant extra rounds even if we find that as a big austerity. But we could also read Bhagavatam more and more. And the idea is the purpose of atonement will be fulfilled not just by punishing ourselves for having done something wrong. The purpose of the atonement will be fulfilled when our heart becomes so attracted to Krishna that we no longer have that tendency to succumb to that wrong desire again. That's why atonement should be such that it reinforces our connection with Krishna. We find those atonements. Those are the best for us. Okay, thank you. Yes, Balaji. Give the mic there, please.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for wonderful class. I have question on the outsider thing. Can you suggest what all the practical things we can implement for this outsider scenario to establish the reputation of ISKCON, so that we can cover this area of outsider to outsider?
What can we do to improve the outsider communication? As one devotee's child, he was in India, born in a devotee family. In his teenage and his college, he just stopped coming to the temple completely. And then I met him, and his parents were talking with me here, and they said, he's not practicing bhakti, you go to America, try to talk with him. And then I went, and he went to an American temple, the Bhakti Center. He was there. Almost every alternate day he's coming there. I said, what happened? So he said that I've been coming here for 3 months, and he said, no one has even once asked me how many rounds I'm chanting. And he says, if I go to a temple in India, everybody asks me how many rounds I'm chanting. And if among devotee circles, if anybody is chanting less than 16 rounds, it's like you are doing sinful activity. He said, every time I would go to a temple in India, it was like I was going on a guilt trip. Or people were sending me on a guilt trip. I say, I don't want to go. But he says, here I can just come, I can practice bhakti, I can chant, I can do seva, and I don't feel guilty at all. So, the point I'm making is, if we want to have positive outsider communication, don't push people too much. Everybody needs a little pushing. But we have to make sure that our pushing is pushing people toward Krishna, not pushing them away from Krishna. So, if actually speaking, coming to a temple, even ordinary people, I've had many of my relatives who are not devotees, they say when we come to a Hare Krishna temple, it's different from many other Hindu temples we go to. There is so much hearing and chanting going on. There's spiritual vibrancy over here. But what people don't like is they are pushed into doing some practices. Sometimes we have these footsteps where people chant the holy names. If they want to do it, that's wonderful. But they shouldn't be pushed to do it. So if we just become a little less pushy, then actually we have a lot to offer. A lot to offer in terms of the spiritual vibrancy, the spiritual variety. And somebody comes to a temple and there's so many things going on in the temple. And there's so many activities they can become part of. But let them do it. So if we are a little less pushy, when we are distributing books, if somebody doesn't want a book, then don't push them too much. When we don't push people too much, because we want a high distribution score, we'll go to somebody else. But if we had time, we would push people too much also. So we just avoid that a little bit. That can make a big difference. Then beyond that, as devotees, we need to do a little more. We need to invest more energy in the media. Media means that what is said about us in social media, what is said in the mainstream media. It's called the legacy media. Now, are our festivals being reported there? Do we have a department for doing that? That is important. Beyond that, this is actually a big service which devotees who are intellectually oriented can take it up. That editing Wikipedia is extremely important. We have almost 1 million devotees, and as far as I know, there are only 3 devotees who are doing anything on Wikipedia pages. I was at the Catholic conference, and they have like 70,000 Catholics whose main service is editing Wikipedia entries. 70,000. Main service. Main service means they spend hours. So what the Wikipedia says about ISKCON, what it says about Srila Prabhupada, what it says about Krishna, what it says about Bhagavad Gita. See, generally, there are many Hindus have become active in the last 5 years at least. Because they saw that how much the Wikipedia is, we can say it's biased. But that is not an answer. Okay, it's biased. So what are you going to do? Are you going to shut down Wikipedia? People are going to go to Wikipedia. We may create a Dharmapedia or something like that. But how many people are going to visit that? So we have to create alternatives to the mainstream, but we have to also change the mainstream at whatever level is possible. That is a very important service. But that is a completely non-glamorized service. Most devotees, if somebody says, I am editing Wikipedia, what is Wikipedia? So that is actually a very, very important service that has to be done. And so like that, we can look at what are the ways in which people come to know. Like we have this website called Quora, where a lot of people ask questions and a lot of people give answers. So, there are devotees who are active, but unfortunately those devotees are using insider to outsider language over there. That just does, or sometimes insider to insider language. Somebody says Prabhupada's Gita is bhakti fanatical. And there's a devotee, Prabhupada is a pure devotee. If you commit offense to you, you'll go to hell. So that is the answer which will make readers say, you go to hell. Isn't it? You cannot answer like that. You have to give rational explanations over there. So there are many forums where there is a lot of opportunity for devotees to do service, especially those devotees who are themselves not comfortable with the pushy approach. So for them, there are a lot of services available. So outsider is a huge universe which is untapped. In spite of that, I would say, because we have devotees who are popular on social media and because of all that, we have at least the word monk has become a cool thing now. Actually, I see in the last 2-3 years, many brahmacharis have published books with mainstream publishers, and those brahmacharis are told, the publishers tell them, we want your picture on the cover page. The brahmachari say, we don't want our picture. You don't want to speak about Krishna. No, he says, if your picture is there, the picture, and even if that monk is not a very well-known monk, that picture is there, people say, oh, we want to know. Monks are supposed to be wise people. We want to know what they're saying. So I think things are changing. Some level outsider to outsider communication has been successful. But now we cannot impose on outsider to outsider communication the terms or the language or the expectations of insider to outsider communication. So that has to be understood. Thank you for that question. Hare Krishna. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Tai Gaur Premanande.
Hare Krishna. So I'm sure all the devotees are very enlivened and enlightened by the time that Prabhuji gave in this Bhagavatam, and we have a wonderful association for the next 2 days. So we would like to miss as many devotees can take benefit. We actually have kept a camp for the working devotees. So Prabhuji is giving time in the day also. Today we'll start. Prabhuji, what is a good time to start? 11. We are at 10:45 also, but what is whatever you say accordingly.
Yeah, 10:45, 12:15. We finish by 12:15, then we can go for prasad.
And they will go at 12:45. So
prasad is 2. Okay.
10:45 or 11. Whatever you say.
11.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So the next class by Chaitanya Charan will be at 11 o'clock for the working devotees, and others also are welcome to join. We have kept it in BVRV, but in case we have a raise of hand here, so we can just appropriately decide whether to do it at BVRV or here. BVRV is closer to Prabhu's stay place. So how many would like to join apart from the working devotees? They can. Working devotees camp is there. They should be there anyway. So then, okay, let me have a raise of hand. Yeah, that's on the Bhagavad Gita 8th chapter. Prabhuji, you can.
So I'm taking an overview of the 8th chapter. I'll be giving 3 sessions. Today 1 and tomorrow 2 after the Bhagavatam class. So I'm going to talk about what remembrance of Krishna means. The first section. The second section is going to be about contrasting between Bhakti Yoga and Dhyan Yoga. In today's terms also yoga is so popular. And the last section, there are 4 sections, but I have 3 sessions. So I'll talk about what Dukkhalayam means and what it doesn't mean.
So, how many would like to take part at the 11 o'clock class? Okay. YouTube later, Prabhuji can decide that. Yes.
Yeah, I can give the links afterwards.
Yes. So then we can have in BVRV because okay, Matajis are also looking for it. So maybe we'll do it here, Prabhuji, then because that will be safe. You can come here. So we'll do it the BVH only, and then so in the evening we have demystifying reincarnation topic that is for even new or just upcoming youth. So that is at 6:30. We may start by 6:45 or 7 based on the number of youth who have arrived. So 6:30 to 8:30 we have kept that time. And then tomorrow we have Srimad Bhagavatam class by Prabhuji in Kunjbihari Mandir. We are still awaiting the decision on His Grace Yaduvar Prabhu's arrival. So if he comes, then we have a class by His Grace Yaduvar Prabhu here and His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu at the Kunjbihari Mandir. And then we'll again start at 11 o'clock the session for the camp. And then at 3:30, tomorrow, 3:30 we'll start the third session. After that, it's a concluding and Harinam Sankirtan. So devotees who would like to join from other than working devotees group, they're welcome to join. It will all be at BVH. Okay, na? Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ki jai. Actually, how you bring out such wisdom when you read the verse, you can go in devotional ecstasy, but how you bring such all these whole discussions which you had, I really appreciate. I'm sure all the working devotees, although I could not give I made a poster, but after hearing your class, I think you will just jump to come.